Ken, we've got another excellent episode today. We're joined by a very important guest. She is BX on X. Becca, welcome to the show for the first time. We're delighted to have you.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate you inviting me on.
And Ken, hello to you.
Hey, good to see you, Jason.
Now, so for people who haven't seen you before, Becca, I became aware of you. Ken and I have been doing shows for about a year, and he told me about your research into this thing called accelerationism and the order of the nine angles and all of this research that you have been doing, which basically has been kind of getting you into trouble with various people. Why don't you give us a little background on you for people who perhaps haven't seen you before?
Yeah, so I consider myself to be a pretty normal Texas mom. I started looking into. I'm also a private investigator. I've done a lot of. I'm a firearms competitor. I'm a firearms trainer. So I've done a lot of self defense and investigation work. Um, Throughout my life, and somehow, some way, I ended up getting involved with kind of looking into these mass shooters and noticing that they had connections to some of these same groups of what I would call like child predators or online groomers that were exploiting kids. And so that's when I started to find the Order of Nine Angles, satanic cult stuff, which at the time, of course, everyone called me insane, because it sounded insane, I guess, you know. Um, and it ultimately ended up being correct and proven correct. And ultimately, it ended up leading me to this child extortion exploitation network called 764, which again sounded crazy before it was widely known, but now it's not just in the US but internationally known as a very serious terror threat. I guess I would say that I've been a very vindicated person over the last year. Right before I started getting attacked by kind of weird people who, you wouldn't expect to attack me, I had been vindicated by, international media and the FBI and groups like that in my research.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is really important. You're just a mom who was also a streamer, a live streamer, and you kind of came upon this stuff that I think regular people would expect the FBI to be looking for, not moms who are busy looking after their own kids. But this is like a very sensible. I like it when we see things that happen and it's easy to understand. You've got a kid and your kid is on the internet. You see these dangerous things on the internet. Ken, you're going to be a father pretty soon. Everybody's worried about their kids. This is not like who is this person? And yet, everybody should be at least open to, okay, we know that there are people out there who want to harm people and whatever. So let's listen to this woman. Why people would go against you is very strange. But it gets to this other larger topic that Ken introduced me to your work regarding this accelerationism that seems to be a larger kind of political movement that is inciting these kids to be school shooters and kind of politicizing and just doing really difficult to understand things, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, it is. It's difficult to understand on purpose. It's intended to be confusing because the ultimate intent is to sow chaos and incite political infighting and to try to use this chaos, the momentum they gain by these acts, these terrorist acts, to facilitate the collapse of society. And they think that they can make society collapse by creating these kind of political or I guess exploiting these political flashpoints, right? And so that's the goal of accelerationism. And there's a lot of different forms of accelerationism. This isn't like the accelerationism stuff so much as it is something that's called militant accelerationism, which has to do, or coalitional accelerationism, which has to do with these more extremist groups that kind of facilitate that employ these tactics to facilitate collapse.
It's crazy that people would want collapse, but we've heard about it before. It's part of what Mao did, right? Collapse society
Mhm.
and then come in with a heavy hand to take
That's
over.
exactly what it is. Yeah.
Isn't
Yeah.
it? And Ken's done so much research into the Butler, PA assassination attempt. One of the things I wanted to ask both of you guys about is that we've just now, for the first time, been hearing, and there's some of these internet characters. I'm not implying that these are the same ones that are after you, but we see Jack Posobiec and other so-called influencers really kind of advancing this idea that, oh, why didn't the FBI tell us that Thomas Crooks was transgender or they, them, or whatever? What do either of you guys, Ken, what do you think about that? It seems like a new idea, kind of.
Yeah, that I looked into that and it seems pretty dubious. All we know is that he had an account on DeviantArt, which I guess I don't know much about that site. Maybe could probably tell you more, but apparently it hosts a bunch of furry content. But Brianna Morello got screenshots of his actual activity, and it's like cartoons of people getting their heads bashed in by a monkey wrench. There's another one of a guy shooting two other people with shotguns. So it doesn't seem to me at all that he was into furry porn, unless it was some kind of deep dark fetish that he was into that he wasn't telling anybody about, and he had another account that was doing this. They also made hay of the fact that his pronouns were they them, but that's actually the default setting. If you open an account on DeviantArt, it automatically has
Mhm.
you as a they them unless you change it. And also this was like around 2020 when a lot of the they them stuff was really becoming mainstreamed. And I remember, myself, even though I was like 10 years older than Crooks, just being a smartass, and on some of these platforms I would put my own thing as they them
Yeah.
just because it's like, I don't know, funny for a smartass man to do, I guess. So
But isn't it,
I story, which is him on some kind of
Ken, like digital, when we see it, affluent type of thing, related to they want after the fact?
it could, and we don't, because I think it's connected to his Epic microwave. That's like a common handle that he was using, but I haven't seen anybody explain the methodology of how they confirmed it. One thing Tucker Carlson did when he released the YouTube comment history is he explained how he got
Yeah.
it, how they got his email and traced that to his Google account. And you had to do two-factor authentication that was actually linked to his father's phone number, which kind of raises some questions of how they got in. But at least we know that's definitely was linked to Crooks, where the DeviantArt, I haven't seen anything that actually linked it to his original email. So it could just be some other handle. Although, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm really not
That's
sure.
That's really important, though, because what we see in the aftermath of mass shootings also is people immediately trying to exploit this political infighting by making the shooter seem like a transgender. That's been the most recent thing. I mean, it's almost like a 4chan troll. Like they used to say it was Sam Hyde and people would fall for it. Now they're out there just making deep fakes or saying like, oh, this random trans person is the shooter, and it turns out not to be true. So there's this wave of disinformation that pushes through, and we've seen that the transgender thing is one of the things that they use more than anything to try to convince people of stuff. And so, yeah, like Ken said, it's really important to see. Like I liked how Tucker did that. He showed this is exactly how we figured it out, and it was pretty solid from what I saw. But a lot of times, if you're giving people a lot of time to fabricate something, they could do that. And so the onus is on them to kind of show you how they found it, to prove it. But like Ken said, I think he made some really good points about how that's a default setting on DeviantArt. DeviantArt's not just for furries; it's just for any kind of weird fringe cartoons. It's most known for furry stuff, true, but if his activity didn't show that, it showed like I saw somebody trying to blame Alex Rosen for the shooting because he had one about shooting pedophiles. So I mean, these people are going to just insane lengths to make meaning out of potentially nothing. I think that's definitely something common with
Oh,
all
but
of
these
these
are
events.
absolutely, these are all platforms that I think they're manipulating. And first of all, deviant art, it's like, and Discord, you've spoken a lot about Discord. Who the hell is naming their platforms these things? Although you did just come up with a great catchphrase for them. Deviant art, it's not just for furries. It could be like an advertising slogan. But there was some really early imagery and even a video from somebody, I think, who was sort of posing as Crooks and saying he was transgender. They sort of peppered that out there very early on. I was disappointed in that Tucker Carlson thing because they didn't speak at all about Maxwell Urich, somebody who I've been talking about quite a lot. I think Ken doesn't agree with me that he was there on that day, but Tucker put out this video that wasn't widely seen until his documentary came out that is allegedly Thomas Crooks walking among the rows of vendors that they had there. But that guy that they show walking has really broad shoulders. He looks kind of a lot more mature than Thomas Crooks. And when that video first emerged last year, I confronted the guy who published it on X because it looked to me like an AI face swap app had been used to put Thomas Crook's face onto Maxwell Urich's body, and this guy ghosted. And as you said, Ken, he wouldn't provide any information about how this video was created, what the origin of all this stuff was. So we know there's deep fakes, we know there's AI, there's lots of ways, particularly now a year out, that they can kind of join these different ideas together. We've just had this murder of Charlie Kirk where the guy is asking him about transgender stuff, and then he's shot by a transgender allegedly furry guy. And again, Jack Posobiec is pushing like crazy this notion that is transgender, I guess, accelerationism. No?
Well, in Tucker's defense, I mean, he's reporting on the material that was given to him, which was an archive of, Thomas Crooks's search history. So to stray off into like the Maxwell Urich theories would seem to be almost kind of missing the point.
Well, wait a minute, Ken. Wait a minute. Is it straying off? The guy is trying to investigate the assassination attempt. And by the way, it's an absolute fact that Tucker Carlson is aware of what I say, what you say. I just found out yesterday his brother is following me on X. Tucker has used my imagery in his reports in the past to defend Alan Dershowitz. He absolutely selects what he reports on. He knows Roger Stone. He knows the body was burned, the FBI washed down the roof the next day, the cops aren't giving out the photographs from Detective Gian Vito's phone. There's so much evidence that it wasn't. I don't want to take this away from what BX is researching, but I think it's important because they're trying to polarize everybody. And when you use somebody like Tucker Carlson, one of the things that BX brought up, and you actually changed my mind on this, because when they said, oh, transgender people shouldn't be allowed to have guns, I said, well, maybe there's something to that. But BX is such a Second Amendment absolutist. She said, no, you can't do that because it starts baby stepping down. And I said, you know what, she's right.
Mm-hmm. What you said about Tucker Carlson is kind of funny because I know for a fact that he's also seen my docuseries, at least my part one, which was sent to him by a mutual friend, and he had comments on it. He thought it was very interesting, but like you said, he has to select what to review and what has merit and what's going to get the clicks and what's not. So, I mean, I understand that from someone as large as him. As far as the Butler stuff, I mean, I think Ken and I both were, and I've definitely not gone as deep as Ken, but we were both in it, looking at it from a pretty, skeptical perspective of what the narrative was. For me, like I tried to not go too far astray from, because what you're saying, Jason, is true. Like everything could be deep fake. I could be a deep fake right now. You could be talking to a robot because that's how advanced this stuff actually is. I mean, I'm serious.
You're right.
So, we've talked about this and we've called it the remystification, which is like, the internet originally demystified things for us. We could see things from other people's perspectives that were real, and we could see the world in a new way. But now we need to remystify, because at the same time, we're in a post-truth reality where we could just deny everything as being fake. It's kind of like, so yes, for any of these things we talk about, you could look at it and say, well, all the evidence is AI, but it's really a maddening perspective to take. If you really follow that perspective down to its logical endpoint, you're in a cabin in the woods without any internet.
Right. Well, I'm not taking that perspective. I mean, again, I don't mean to focus it on this, but I look at the evidence of the guy in the hood, the person in the hoodie, and the COVID mask in the middle of July in 2024, 4 years after masks are used. I don't think that's the sister. That person is also going to the lawyer with the father. I don't think that's the sister. That person is also walking around dressed up like the Invisible Man in July outside the family home. I don't think that's the sister. I think that's Thomas Crooks. And just going back to basically the core of your research, that these accelerationists are sort of grooming kids to do things online. I think it's very complicated as far as what they groom them to do and how long. It is a plan to eliminate the Second Amendment and to change people's understanding of the truth. And I do think that these things are largely manipulated. Now, you've also brought up a very good topic, which is that we can't just say, oh, everything the FBI says is false. And Ken was sensitive to this in my title, because we do need the FBI to enforce this sort of stuff. You've been interacting and working with them. And then we've got these FBI whistleblowers. I don't know if you want to name this person, but you have had a lot of different bizarre interactions with the FBI, haven't you, BX?
Well, yeah, and so I mean, as a background, I mean, I don't mind to saying that it's Kyle Seraphin, because it was all very confusing and upsetting for me at the time. I was this kind of relatively little known figure who'd been advocating for. In fact, back then I think I only had like 30,000 followers, as opposed to now. I mean, most of those followers I gained after Kyle attacked me, because people were like, whoa, this guy's attacking her. I definitely need to know what she's saying. Sean Ryan kicked her off the show. Maybe this is important. It was like the Streisand effect, right? But it was very confusing and upsetting for me at the time, because it didn't seem like anyone would be attacking me, especially not it would be easy for someone to come and say, hey, who is this person? Nobody knows who this person is. She has no clout. She has no credentials. She has no experience. Who cares what she has to say? Valid, honestly. I mean, right? Like, I mean, that I wouldn't say it would be valid necessarily, but they could make that argument. But instead of that, Kyle just decided to tell everyone, in fact, this giant pedophile ring that we know is real is not actually real. It's fake and made up, and she's making it up. And then he kind of pivoted from there to say, well, okay, it's real, but no one actually cares about it. And then he kind of pivoted from there to say, oh, well, the FBI says they care about it, but in reality, it's just blah, blah, blah. So, at first, though, he did kind of say it was fake and made up and not statistically relevant, and I was just making it up. And he tried to gaslight the entire internet, which turned out to be a really big mistake for him, because I'm not the only person looking at this. Like, the entire internet was like, no, Kyle, what are you doing? So if you're Kyle and presumably your goal is to counter everything the FBI says, right? Everything. Then it seems like in this case, you would just ignore the things that the FBI is obviously doing that would be favorable, like, arresting violent pedophiles who are extorting children online. And you would just kind of ignore me and pretend I don't exist, rather than attack me and turn me into this martyred figure, which is kind of, I think, what actually happened for a while. And then I kind of thought that maybe he forgot about me. I just let it go, whatever. But then he decided to start attacking me again over the last couple of days, and his rhetoric became even more defamatory. Well, the FBI rapid response page quote tweeted me. And
right,
and so,
I saw that. I saw that. Well, but
so
that's
obviously
interesting.
that's what would set him off.
I think that's right, because you see, Kyle Seraphin, in my observation, I said this to Ken last time, and I think he's not a Star Trek fan, but he's a bit like the Borg, in that you show up on the spaceship and they say, we don't really care. You identify the warp core and start hammering on it, and immediately they turn and come and kill you, because the second you represent a threat, he's going to do something. And, it's good that your following on X grew after Kyle attacked you, but we really can't measure how an appearance appearance on the Sean Ryan show might have
It would have
grown
been
you even
massive for
more.
me.
Right.
Not just for me, and I don't really think about it in terms of that. Another
But
reason
the
that my
message.
following grew was because the FBI came out right after that, and it wasn't all because of him. Also, the FBI came out right after that and vindicated me. But the Sean Ryan show was an opportunity to educate millions of parents on this threat.
Right.
My biggest goal has always been to educate parents because there's a lot of things we can do on the law enforcement side to arrest these guys, investigate them. There's a lot that social media platforms can do to keep kids safe that don't infringe on other like don't like go towards digital IDs and stuff, which I don't agree with. But there's all kinds of things we can do. But the most direct way to protect kids from these people is, in fact, to educate parents and let them know
Right.
that these things exist so that they're more aware of what their kids are doing online. And then we can prevent victims from even existing in the first place. Obviously not at 100%, but the more parents that are aware of this, the more kids we could potentially protect. And that's what the opportunity for the Sean Ryan show represented that he took away from me, was that opportunity to educate millions of parents and save kids' lives.
And this also ties into the pipe bomb case, by the way. And I
Right.
guess maybe I should have started off the show by explaining like kind of how I know BX and why we're friends. And this actually goes back to late 2023. We had been mutuals for a while, but I never really talked to her until I tweeted something out about I think Jeff Scoop being an FBI informant. He's a neo-Nazi guy. BX had been looking into him, but then we started collaborated on that. But then she, at the time, I think she got nuked off of Twitter, her main account, and she was worried about even putting herself out there on some of these issues. So she gave me information about this lady named Jade Parker, who is a counterterrorism analyst, held a security clearance, did a lot of like groundbreaking academic research on accelerationism. She actually claimed on Twitter in mid 2022 that she identified the pipe bomber. And then, like a couple weeks later, she totally vanished. But Becca found her archived tweets and a lot of her research that she left on a Google Drive that was available online. She gave that all to me. I did a story on Jade Parker and how she claimed to identify the pipe bomber, but then vanished. And that story went pretty viral. It got like retweeted by, I think, Cheryl Atkinson and Laura Logan.
Mm-hmm.
And that's actually when Kyle first popped into the picture as far as like criticizing this kind of strain of research. Is she said, or Kyle said that, oh, who Jade Parker's a nobody and this is all bullshit and like this whole
Yeah, Jade Parker is a
accelerationism is
nobody.
pointless.
Like, why
And
would he say that? So strange.
yeah, and then fast forward like 2 years later, and now he's at the center of this like really dubious story about the pipe bomb, and he's one of the guys spreading misinformation about who the investigation should be focusing on and why. So
Yeah.
Wow.
whether
Yeah,
he's just
and
doing this
that's
because he's a reactionary asshole or because he's got something
No way.
deeper motives, it's
well, that's
unclear to
what
me.
that's what my theory is now. Because at the time I was very confused at why he was attacking me over 764, but then I remembered that he had made those comments about Jade Parker like a year before, and I was like, that's because I never had any other interactions with him other than
But,
that.
but what's your theory
Um,
now? That he's a reactionary asshole or he has some other motive?
well, yes, but also I
All of the
think that
above.
I think that it's interesting that this coincided again with the pipe bomber stuff coming up, because I know that on the Sean Ryan show, I had given them an outline of the things I was going to talk about, and part of it, and they had specifically asked me about this Jade Parker and the accelerationism stuff, and they wanted to go over it on the show. Well, it seems like maybe they called Kyle up because he
Yeah.
was like, an expert on that. And it
Right.
seemed like he said, oh, actually, but he didn't want to give away that it was really about the pipe bomber. So he just made up all the stuff about this pedophile ring being fake. But in reality, maybe he didn't want me to go on the show, because I was wondering if it was possible. And I have a Substack article about this, that I did recently. But like, is it possible that he thought I had some kind of information about the pipe bomber that I was going to reveal on the Sean Ryan show, even though I didn't? I didn't, ironically, have anything. But, perhaps he was worried that I might have something that debunked their narrative, which would imply that something to debunk their narrative exists, right? Because
Right.
if you were completely certain about your narrative being the one true, correct narrative, then you wouldn't worry about some random lady
Right.
on the internet who could possibly have information to counter it.
But help us understand. So your theory now is that he is just a random jerk who's disrupting you, or he has some specific purpose? I would think he has
I
a
think that his
specific purpose.
purpose could have possibly had to do with his concern that I knew something about the pipe bomber, even though I didn't.
Let me ask you both a
I
question.
think that the
What about the
764 was just
a cover
yeah,
story for him?
yeah,
But let me
yeah.
ask you both about this, because someone works for the FBI. Actually, what we're going to do real quick, this is a good time for us to break. We're going to head over to a sponsor exclusive segment that people are going to be able to join us for on all platforms today. People can subscribe to Ken on substack.com/@KenSilva. You can subscribe to Becca and read all of her great articles and follow her work on bxrights.substack.com, and of course people who sponsor Crowdsource the Truth on crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com or on subscribestar.com or patreon.com will be able to follow us there, and we're going to pick up the conversation on the other side. People who follow me on X at JG_CSTT and subscribe there will also get the sponsor